What's up, everyone? Jay Ingersoll here, Metal Maniacs Podcast. Today, kind of doing it solo for the most part due to some scheduling conflicts. Nick won't be with us, but I do have one of my best friends, and there couldn't be a better dude that's sitting across from me today. This is our first interview on this series. This dude has been an awesome drummer. There's been so many people in awe of watching his drumming skills. I've shared the stage with this guy for the last 12 plus years, maybe 15 now. He's been responsible for so many awesome memories that we've had as far as playing the stage and doing all kinds of things. And now he's still playing off doing his own thing. And I really wanted to have him on as the first guest because I couldn't think of anybody better. So welcome to the pod, Adam Eklund.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jay. Appreciate it, man. This is definitely cool. First time doing something like this, so it's awesome to have this experience. And we're talking about metal, and I love metal. You love metal, so heck yeah, man. I'm all about it.
Hell yeah. So, yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks for taking your time out of the day. I know you're busy and you got stuff to do, but yeah, so as far as metal goes, and I mean, there's stuff we could talk about, forever, but so how did you kind of start getting into metal? Like,
yeah, for me, I mean, I grew up in the early 90s, so it was glam rock was my thing when I was young, super young, That was kind of the first music I got into. And, I mean, I didn't even get introduced to metal probably till maybe I was 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's kind of embarrassing to say now, but my first time hearing Metallica was the Black Album. But yeah, a high school buddy introduced them to me and played them for me, and I was like, dang, this is awesome, So I started getting into metal, and then it was kind of the thrash thing, Slayer and some of the other thrash bands. That was about Iron Maiden, stuff like that. That was about the heaviest I was into at that point. And then, back in the day, you'd have the music stores, of course, where you'd go and you just check out all the albums and look at the covers and be like, damn, this looks sweet. I'll try this band out. And I remember just being at the mall one day with my brother. I believe it was Camelot Music back in the day in the mall there.
Yeah,
remember that place, of course,
for sure.
It was the shit. And, we just look at the album covers and be like, oh, this looks cool. And, my brother picked up this band called Bolt Thrower and it just had kind of this medieval painting for the cover art on it, And I don't remember what I even picked up at that point. It was probably some thrash album of some kind. I don't recall exactly. But we were driving home in the back of my parents' car, listening to them in our little Walkmans,
Oh, okay.
And I was jamming out to mine, and I looked over at my brother and I was like, so how's the one you bought? And he's like, man, it fucking sucks. I was like, oh man, that sucks. I was like, why? What's up with it? And he's like, the dude's all like, he's burping. He's like, his voice is all, you like can't understand a fucking thing he's saying. I'm like, what? Let me listen to it. I put it in like right then, dude, like my mind was blown.
Okay.
I'm like, this is fucking heavy metal.
Nice.
Like this is heavy.
Yeah.
Because Iron Maiden shit was cool.
Right.
But like I had this concept or kind of in my mind of like that evil, what real heavy metal should be. And the first time I heard death metal, the first time I heard those just deep guttural vocals with that distorted guitar, that Bolt Thrower album, when I first heard it was like, damn, now this is what I've been looking for.
Oh, nice.
And that started the quest, So then it's like you go to the music store and you start just trying to find any band that looks like it might be like that,
Yeah.
And that's how I got into. It would have been Deicide, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, those bands I started, the core bands back then, I would have started getting into those and getting those albums. So yeah, that's kind of how it started for me.
Nice. Yeah, it was kind of it's always kind of that progression, right? Where you start slow, but I've also been burned quite a few times. I'm sure you have too. On like, man, this looks sick as fuck, and you buy it, and then it's just some real shitty thing, or it's Judas Iscariot or whatever. Like.
Yeah, I mean, most of the death metal for the most part was pretty solid. I didn't get too many, stinkers on those. But I tell you what, in the black metal world out, man, there was a lot of shit bands there, man. Like you were just trying to find that black metal band that you loved, and oh man, there was some garbage with the black metal out there. A lot of shit bands, but Yeah.
That was always a hard transition for me, is because when you start listening to, my early stuff was the bleeding, death, symbolic, Carcass Heartwork. That's kind of when I started really getting into the heavy shit, right? Like kind of after Slayer and the Metallica and that. But you hear those productions and then you're like, okay, this shit sounds pretty sweet, right? Like everything's clear, like everything makes sense. And then if you go back or you go to the black metal route, that's what always kind of got me in the black metal thing, is because when they're like, this guy, I remember I was riding in his car and I didn't really know. I thought Deicide was black metal because I never heard black metal. He's like, no, that's more like black and death metal, because I thought black metal was just death metal that talked about Satan and shit. So I thought that's what Deicide was, right?
Yeah.
But Deicide's more black and death metal, I guess, or like satanic death metal, I guess. But, there's so many subgenres, right, or whatever. But I remember that specifically. He was like, no, this is black metal. He put it in. I was like, what the fuck is this? I couldn't even hear anything. It sounded like the dude was beating on a trash can. I was like, people like this shit? But then it took a while for me to get into that, because then when I finally found the ones that actually had the cleaner production and stuff, I was like, okay, now I get it. But it was just really hard. Some of that was really hard to digest, some of that early black metal,
Yeah, I think for me too, right, the black metal point was when I was in that 15, 16 years old range. So it was right at that point where you're just trying to fucking be rebellious and different and be evil and think it's so fucking cool. So that I thought that was cool, that shitty sound and raw fucking cult black metal sound. To me, it was just like, it's real fucking evil. Yeah, this is evil.
Yeah. And that was the one thing that I have learned, especially doing some research for this podcast, and then just like listen to, like, you've seen like what's the black metal documentary?
Something
Darkness.
light will take us.
Yeah,
or
the light will take us or whatever. Like, that was their whole shtick, was like, we fucking hate death metal. That's pussy shit.
Commercialized.
Like Napalm Death for pussies, and you're like, oh, okay, I get where you're coming from. They fucking hated the establishment that was against the establishment. They're like, what the fuck is this shit?
And it's funny too how that whole thing, like, there really was just a small kind of elite group that were really elite, and then it did just become this popular fucking fad of so much after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so with the death metal, getting into that, I mean, but you still like the death metal shit too, right? Even while you're getting into the black metal and all that,
for sure. I wasn't like turning my back on death metal saying, oh, no, I don't like death metal. I still love the death metal too, for sure. And, still rocked all the old thrash and all the, even the glam rock still, Yeah.
Because you like what you like, what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Yeah. And all that shit was better than, I mean, that was kind of the difference where you're just a smidge older than me, but I never really kind of got into the glam rock phase and all that. Like, I did like some of the rock, like the Ozzy and stuff like that. But I think where it turned the corner for me is like, I did get into some of the new metal shit, and you probably didn't fuck with none of that at all.
I fucking hated the new metal shit, man. Yeah, I was right at that point of like, glam rock was just ending and grunge was just coming on board.
Okay.
So like, I loved glam rock, and then I fucking hated grunge. I couldn't get into grunge.
Yeah.
And then same with all the new metal shit. To me, that was just poser shit, commercialized bullshit that they're trying to sell people, watered down versions of what real metal should be, and I just couldn't get into any of it. But now I look back and I'm like, a lot of that shit is pretty cool now.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, I couldn't get into it.
Yeah, that's one thing that Nick and I discuss, is where it's like, you kind of make, music's one of those things where it grows with you, and then sometimes you'll go back and you'll listen to things and you're like, even with the death metal, there's just so many bands out there that, like, Suffocation's a good one, and I'm going to go into more of that when I do one of the other episodes. But I know that was a band that you always fucking loved. Like, we'd be going to shows or whatever, and you'd always be just fucking Suffocation. And then that was just one that kind of flew under the radar. And then, I heard it here and there, but, sometimes it's just whatever's in your periphery at the time or whatever. And then, like, I kind of go, you and I went to that Suffocation show, right? We went and seen Belphegor and Suffocation.
No, I wasn't with you. That must have been...
Me and you seen Fetus and somebody, I think. Okay, yeah. That was in Grand Rapids or whatever. Yep. But, I went to that Suffocation show and they played with Belphegor, and I wanted to see Belphegor, but, like, Suffocation was a bonus. But then when I seen him play, I was like, damn, I've been sleeping on these motherfuckers for so long, Right. I was like, I would have loved this shit back then, because those guys were the Slam champions.
Yeah, they were like the inventors of slam, in my opinion, for the most part. I'm sure there's some other bands out there that can take credit for that as well. But to me, back in the early 90s in high school, hearing Effigy of the Forgotten, which was their first album, the very first opening track, towards the end, he busted into that dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Burr, 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 burr. And that was the first time I ever heard that groovy fucking kind of like fuck. And I was like, I never heard none, because none of those other death metal bands were doing shit like that.
No.
And so like I love those guys immediately, and always have. They're just one of those core death metal bands that's always going to be in my playlist for sure. And then seeing them live, they're amazing.
Yeah,
like you said, I saw them in Milwaukee Metal Fest, and I think it was 97.
Nice. Oh, okay.
And that was just ridiculously badass. They were so sweet, and I would love to see them again. It's been a lot of years since I've seen them, but yeah, just killer band. Definitely love Suffocation.
Yeah, that drummer they have, it's like he must just be a touring guy or whatever. His name is Eric.
Roddy.
Yeah, he's like from Canada
badass,
or something.
Man. He's a good drummer.
Yeah,
man.
he's a dude. When I seen him, I was just like, not one fucking trigger was off, not one snare. I was just like, holy tight, like what the fuck?
Big old Viking beast dude too, man. He's a big dude, man.
He's a big dude, but he was just cruising on that motherfucking kit, dude. I was just like, wow. I was super impressed by them, and that that was the thing. Like, so I've always loved Death because of their technicality, and then like they didn't really have they had like some groove, but it was a different kind of groove, right? And same with Carcass, and then Morbid Angel sometimes would bust into some of them nice fucking just neck snapper grooves, But that was kind of what I was always looking for. Like when I heard Hypocrisy, I loved Hypocrisy, but my favorite parts when they would actually get into that death metal groove. So like when coming back around to Suffocation, it was like one of those things where it was just like, man, I missed that slam. That's what I was looking for the whole fucking time. Because when I first kind of heard them, you got to admit that they are Slayer-esque. Like some of their, they kind of got that kind of shit. And then some of the riffs are just bada 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 bada, So I wasn't able to ingest it, in the right frame of mind. But then after I listened to it, I was like, fuck, I was missing this the whole time. I could have been slamming to these guys.
That's another band there. It was one of the earlier bands I got into, that Hypocrisy, that Asculum Obscenum album back in the day. That was one of the heaviest, evilest things I ever heard in my life. I was like, this is out of control, man. Yeah. Also one of the first bands I heard triggering the bass drums back then.
Okay.
I want to say even that first album of theirs, he had triggers on the bass drums, and that was like way before anyone was doing it. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. I'm like, those drums sound sweet. But I didn't know anything about it back then, of course.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember Nick had The Fourth Dimension.
Oh, uh-huh.
And that one was like, Hypocrisy is a weird band because they kind of did that, like, when you hear that first, it's just kind of really slow and droning.
Yeah, see that album, man, like I was disappointed when that came out because I loved Asking Mulcinum, and then that came out, and that was almost like this doom, slow as shit.
Yeah.
And
there was like keyboards and like a bunch of extra shit.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking it was okay, but then I kind of did the opposite, whereas like I was like, okay, I like Hypocrisy, but you kind of go down that rabbit hole, right, where you go to the record store when they used to have record stores, and then you're like, okay, Hypocrisy, this is a band I like, so let me pick up this record and this record, and then I picked up that Asculum Obscenum or whatever, and then I was like, oh, this is fucking sweet, man. This is super badass, Like it was a little dated with as far as the production or whatever, but a lot of that you just got to take it in stride too. You take it for the time and what it is,
right?
Because even going back to some of that old Suffocation, like it doesn't sound as good as the new shit, but it still slams. It's like fuck,
Yeah, like you mentioned too, dude. It's kind of crazy to think about now, like how you're talking about the first bands you were into, Death, Carcass. Where I was more like, you were more the tech kind of musical part of the metal, where I was more the basic evil kind of groove driven stuff was more what clicked with me. So like, for some reason back then I had a hard time getting into Death, and I had a hard time getting into Carcass. Yeah. And I hear it now and I'm like, oh, it's fucking sweet.
Right.
Oh man, I don't know why I didn't like it back then, but at that point, I guess that was just, to me, wasn't fit my image of being evil enough or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird though, because of you being a drummer or whatever, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But like you being a drummer and like still doing like fast and technical shit, it was kind of weird that you kind of didn't take to that because there was technicality and shit going on there, you know? So it was like
all that too, that was before I was drumming.
okay.
I didn't start playing the drums till probably 18, 19.
Okay.
So, you know, I had a few years of listening to metal.
Late, really.
Yeah, I wasn't an early starter, you know. I was around 18 or 19 when I first got shown some drums and started messing around with playing the drums and whatnot. So, yeah, so I didn't I think it would have been different if I had been playing and heard those albums like you said.
Right.
And I would have been more like, oh, wow, this is crazy awesome. You know?
Yeah. And that was kind of my thing where, you know, I started playing guitar. So then it was like your first little few things that you play guitar, right? It's like you learn the little Marilyn Manson because it's popular, the Sweet Dreams. Then you start learning the Metallica 1. And then you're like, I started liking heavier shit. So then it was like, well, what can I now challenge myself guitar-wise? And the next best thing for me was like Death and Carcass and shit, not Cannibal Corpse. I did like Cannibal Corpse, but if you're looking for technicality, like there is some there, don't get me wrong, but it's not death technical, you know?
Right.
So, you know, I always like the Corpse and I like the Morbid Angel and stuff like that, you know. And Morbid Angel is technical as fuck, actually, too, you know. But I think it was just kind of, I leaned that way almost because it was almost more palatable, you know. Because really, if you listen to, because I started with Death Symbolic and Carcass Heartwork. If you go back and listen to like Carcass Necroticism, that's fucking death metal and it's got the high vocals and the low vocals and just like the grind. It's pretty much grindcore, you know. If I started with that, I may not have been like the biggest Carcass fan, you know. So it was just kind of one of those things where I almost worked backwards, where I started getting, I kind of had that taste where it was more palatable. And like Chuck, you could kind of always understand what he said and shit, you know.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't like it, because I was like, oh, it's not evil enough. I'm like, you can understand them.
Yeah. And then I loved the bleeding, right? And then I listened to Tomb of the Mutilated and I was like, what the fuck is this? He's just doing that toilet bowl the whole time.
I remember my buddy Shane, he heard that album and he was like, it just sounds like he's pushing a refrigerator across a basement floor. Oh, it just always kills me thinking about that.
Man, that's the best analogy I've ever heard, actually. The old fucking Maytag man just putting a new one
but
in
yeah,
the
man, like
kitchen.
that Tomb of Mutilated, Butcher of Birth, Cannibal, that was some fucking raw shit back then, man. That was just, woo.
Well, it was weird because Butchered, like, you could almost understand what he said. It's like he kind of went through, like, his vocal went through, like, this weird thing because it was still that low kind of, you know, Cookie Monster, quote unquote, type of thing, but like you could kind of hear what he was saying because they were kind of more punk at the beginning, even before.
Right.
Then they went into that, but then when he went to the Tomb of the Mutilated, he was pushing that fridge a lot. Yeah, because he like. If I'm not mistaken, I don't feel like he even started really doing that like high vocal until almost like the bleeding.
Yeah, I think bleeding is the first time he did any kind of highs. Yeah. Yep.
And I remember, I still love that album.
Oh, the bleeding is a masterpiece, man. That was one of those albums that just was like, yeah, I took it a whole new level because it was just like, it was so musical at that point, what they did there. You know, everything before was brutal and heavy as fuck, you know, but that album was like so musical, catchy, and well, you know, written, everything about it. Like
songwriting. They had the songwriting with that. And, and then, you know, Then I kind of got into this thing too, where I was like, "Fuck Cannibal Corpse." After Chris Barnes left, not knowing kind of who Chris Barnes thinks he is, or you know whatever. I try to keep it upbeat and positive on here, so I'm not going to say anything about Chris Barnes because I don't know the guy or anything. But you know, just his reputation, I guess, precedes him, right? So, but then like Cannibal, I should have probably listened to more of that with Corpse Grinder because his shit's pretty fucking badass too. Like a lot of their music's really good, you know. Like anything I still hear nowadays, anything that comes out, I'm like, man, this is pretty fucking sweet. It's just, it's just one of those things, man. It's so hard to just keep up with all the bands. You know, you only have so much time to listen to music. Luckily, lately at my job, I can listen to music in headphones. So I just like I'll listen to my podcast, but instead of listening to podcasts, I'll just take more time lately to listen to music just because I haven't done it for so long. And then like trying to be inspired for this podcast too. It's like I want to kind of go back and revisit some things, you know, and that's kind of the discussion about Suffocation. I asked you that one day, like what's some Suffocation that you like and you know shit like that, but it's like man, you almost got to make time for it, you know. It's like if you really like it, and then you do realize how much you really do enjoy it after you make the time to listen to it, you know.
Yeah, I find it challenging now in my position because I, you know, working from home, I'm not driving hardly anymore. And that used to be when I listened to a lot of music, is when I was driving, you know, driving to work. Like I used to drive an hour to work, so yeah, that was all that time to listen to music. But now that I don't drive, I just find myself, I don't know, I don't listen to music much when I'm at home. It's weird. I don't know why.
But you're doing other things, and like, you know, at work it's kind of nice for me because I can do that intentional listening, right? Like I can really, like, yeah, I'm doing my job, but I can actually listen, because it's different if you put, I'm like, hey bro, check out this band or whatever, you just put it on in the background, like you're not going to get the full effect of what's going on, you know? But for me, it's kind of made me like really fall back in love with, like, I've always loved metal, you know? We were kind of talking about that before the show. It's just something I've always loved. That's why I've always played it. That's why I'm like, yeah, I want to do something different musical. And then, like, if you listen to the shit that I'm working on now, it's just as heavy as any of the Infinite Design shit. I'm like, always think I'm going to do something else. But then when I go write riffs, it's just all fucking super heavy fucking shit. Yeah.
Let's get some fridge vocals on there.
Yeah. I just wonder if you can help me move the fridge so I can get the vocals recorded. So let's talk about drumming, you know.
Sure.
So you said you got into it when you were 18 or 19, which is kind of late, you know? I mean, I didn't start playing guitar till I was like 15, which is still pretty early, but, you know, you got some kids that are playing at 5 or 6 or whatever, you know, and obviously nowadays they're probably playing death metal, but at that, I mean, you know, back then when you weren't as exposed to as many things, I'm sure they're not playing, you know, death metal unless their dad showed them what to do. But
yeah.
So 18, 19, so what did that look like?
Yeah, so, I mean, earlier in high school, I did band. I did some saxophone for a while. I was just not feeling it, you know. So I kind of dabbled in some other things. Wish I would have took drums back then, because if I would have took drums in high school, I would have learned, you know, core and all the proper rudiments and shit I should have been really drilling into my head, you know. But yeah, I actually had a buddy of mine, Mike Scheffler, who was... he's an amazing drummer, great guy, good friend of mine. He was a drummer at the time, and, you know, I'd watch him play, and he actually started showing me some stuff. Okay. You know, so I'd kind of watch him, and he'd sit me down and kind of show you, well, this is how you do your basic beat, you know, the money beat. He'd show me the money beat. 4
on the floor.
Yeah, 4 on the floor. And as soon as you learn to play that note, man, then you pretty much... you fall in love with the drums, because it's like, yeah, I'm playing them, you know, I'm doing it, I'm living the dream.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing something. You're not just making fucking racket. You
know? So yeah, he was kind of showing me some stuff, and he had a band that played kind of some different covers, like Dave Matthews stuff, some other kind of like just, I guess you'd say, lighter rock type music at the time. And I actually played bongos in that band. I picked up a set of bongos. This is still before I was really a drummer. Okay. And just kind of started doing some hand drumming shit. Oh. And I'd come to their practice and jam the bongos, and they thought it was cool. It just added a cool element to it.
I didn't know you were a hippie before.
Yeah. I mean, shit. We had a
What's up, man? I got the bongos.
Yeah, we had a violin player. There was a girl, her name was Betsy. She played the violin in the band. Okay. And so yeah, I just jammed some hand drums, and we did a couple shows where I played some hand drums with them here and there. So that was kind of my first dabbling of doing a little something musical. Nice. So yeah, then I like I said, Mike was showing me a little bit of basics on the drums, so that inspired me to get a drum set. So got the first drum set, the old CB kit. Okay. Quality. Yeah, got to start somewhere. Yep. So I got that. Like I said, I must have been probably 18, 19. I was still living at home, and I think I was in high school, so I was probably like 18. Okay. So yeah, and then it's just, that just starts the journey. And then it's like you just sit down and start trying to play the music that you hear and play covers, like you said, you know. Yeah. I remember, you know, Chad Conant, my friend, you know, he dabbled in starting to learn how to play the bass, so we'd get together and we started playing like rock tunes. Like, I remember the first song I really played on the drums was Kansas, Wayward Son. Oh, okay. Do, 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 pop. That was like the first kind of thing I ever laid down on the drums with someone. So Chad and I just jamming that out, you know. And that was kind of my first getting into it. So, yeah. Nice. So, what did you do? Just kind of like turn on the stereo and kind of play along with it, or like put on the headphones for the most and just try to, you know, like, of course, this was before the internet. You know, none of that was around. Yeah, I had a giant, big-ass stereo with some giant, you know, 15-inch speakers, and I just cranked that thing and try to play songs, play the songs that I'd hear. So it was just hearing it and trying to play it, because you didn't have shit you could really see back then of how it was done or anyone to show you. You just kind of had to play it and try to do it the best you could,
and hear it. Yeah, kids these days, they have it so easy just to be able to turn on YouTube and see what somebody's doing.
Have a total laid out video showing you this is what you do and this is the time signature, blah blah blah. I mean, like, yeah, back then, I mean, there was guitar tabs, and I can remember in the magazines there'd be like guitar tabs for Slayer songs and stuff. But as far as drums, like, you didn't have access to any kind of information or people that knew how to play that shit. You just heard it and you tried to mimic it.
Well, I do remember them having like drum books too, but it's almost like you'd have to know, like you said, you didn't really play in school, so you'd almost have to know, because there's like a certain notation for drums too.
Yeah, and that's like the thing. I never learned how to read music for the drums, so like you could show me a book of the drums back then, and I'd be like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to play this.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't. Like with the tab books, at least it was easy because it was like 1, 3, 5 because it's on the fretboard and easy to learn. But it wasn't like that for the drums, you know. So what made you want to strive to do what you did on the drums? Is it your taste in music then, because you were doing heavier shit?
Yeah, because then I'm at that point. Yeah, I'm pretty much full on death metal, black metal. So then it's just a quest of, like you were saying, the progression thing. It's this sense of I gotta play something that's fast and technical and just something that hasn't been done before. So you just start trying to push yourself to learn and do stuff that's a little more extreme. And that's pretty much what I did. And like I said, I jammed with Chad for a while there, just dinking around with the covers and just playing some rock songs. But it was probably 2-3 years in there where that was just kind of what I was doing. The hand bongo thing, hanging out with my friend Mike and his friends and doing that. And it was probably 2 or 3 years later down the road in the early 20s when the Enrapture project started that I met up with those guys, and that was my first quest into actually doing a metal project on the drums.
Yeah, that was one thing that I've always I guess I could say that for myself too, but because I've been in several different bands, but for you it's kind of like it's been like basically 3 bands, right? I mean, like Enrapture, and then we spent many a year together in Infinite Design, and now XIron Sharpens, right?
Yep.
But that was always one thing that I thought was cool. Even when we started jamming in Infinite Design, it was like you were still trying to keep that Enrapture thing alive. I know, because you were kind of relying on those guys, but they all kind of just ended up falling by the wayside, So what was that experience like as far as like that being your first band? And do you remember, before we get into that, do you remember coming to that show and watching me and Nick play that?
100%. Yeah, Chad and I going to watch you and Nick play.
Before we didn't even know each other.
No, it's so weird when you think about it now. Like, meeting someone back then that you didn't really know, and then all these years later we'd be such great friends and play music for so many years, and it's just crazy how life works like that. But yeah, 100% remember going to that show and watching that, and and you know how it is back then, like when you meet some other people that are into the music you're into, it's like, oh, this is so fucking cool, these guys are awesome, because they like what we like, and you hardly ever meet anyone that likes that kind of shit.
Right.
Back then it was obscure as hell.
Yeah, we were playing with like a fucking like butt rock kind of, what I don't want to say butt rock because they weren't like actual butt rock, but they're like playing with like a punk band and some other kind of, there was not even one metal band on that bill to scratch. We just like opened it and we're playing like Carcass and Morbid Angel and shit, like, or trying our best.
Right.
We didn't really, you know how it is when you kind of first start, but we gave it a valiant effort, I thought, so it was just one of those things where it's just funny because there is video and I do have it somewhere. It's really shitty video, but I can see you guys moshing in it or whatever. Like, awesome. So it's just funny that video exists, and didn't even know who you guys were at all. And I mean, Garvey was there too, because Garvey always supported us. He never sang for us, but that was kind of how that all bridged into starting to jam with Garvey and stuff too.
Who played the drums back then?
His name is Rich Gunderman. He's still around, but I don't think he plays at all. Yeah, he was playing the drums, but he was one of those, like, he was a guitar player first, but then he like bought drums, and then he was like trying to played drums, but he just kind of was really stuck in some of those weird rock beats where he just couldn't, like, I wanted that grind and that fast double bass, and like he could do some of it, and he got a lot better as we progressed, you know, but it was just one of those things that just kind of didn't work out.
Yeah, speaking of that too, that's kind of where, you know, it's the whole learning process and where you learn. I mean, I kind of was so excited to play metal that I jumped ahead of the basics and started learning double bass grinding before learning how to play a proper rock beat in the pocket like I should have, you know, but that's just the whole thing with what you love and you have the enthusiasm. That's what I wanted to do. So that's what I wanted to play, you know, but looking back, of course, it would have been better to learn the basics solid before advancing to that stuff. But
it's because you watched those guys, you know. It was the same with guitar for me. I'm like trying to shred all this shit and it's all out of key and weird because I don't even know. I could have played a shitty ass pentatonic scale, like, and then been in key, but like just learn how to do that fast and it would have been better than me trying to pretend to do all this shit. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's just, it kind of goes with it. You're just trying to, you know, just trying to emulate the guys that you liked, you know? So, I mean, it's totally understandable. But yeah, so explain that a little bit to me, just the whole Enrapture, like kind of what that looked like and, you know, for you as far as like getting into a band and starting to play shows and shit.
Yeah, so, I mean, super exciting, man. I mean, here it is. It's like, you know, I'm actually playing with people and we're writing metal music and now we're starting to play it in front of people, you know, and it's that first experience at doing something, you know, you're a virgin at it and your confidence isn't there. And, you know, those first few shows were pretty rough to look back on. Like I was super, super nervous, you know, playing, but like anything, the more you do it, the more confident you get and start to feel better. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing time. And it was, you know, almost 25 years ago at this point, I guess. So it was, I mean, I think people were a little more receptive around then towards metal. It was when Pantera was, you know, so huge and, you know, like the areas we were playing, like people were pretty receptive to it. I mean, it's not like there was tons of people coming to shows, but it was a lot better back then than it is nowadays. That's for sure. But yeah, it was awesome, man. You know, and I got to do my dream, I guess, you know, and play metal music that I listened to as a kid and always wanted to do.
And then, because I remember at that time too, there was like, and we all kind of go through it, right? And I guess the weird thing is like, you know, you came and seen like Nailed. That was the name of the band that I was playing in. And then I remember doing kind of that. Remember when they had that fucking big party out?
Pines Point party?
Pines Point, yeah. So I kind of remember that vaguely, and I remember there was like a lot of weird stuff going on at that time. I remember because I was in
room 213? Was that
237? That was the room in The Shining that. When he was locked in there, you couldn't go in that room because he's like, "What's in room 237?" And then at the end, you find out it's that crazy bitch that was in the bathtub or whatever when he was starting to lose his mind or whatever. Like she was all dead or something in there.
So Garvey was in that with you?
Yeah, and you know at that time there was a lot of weird shit going on. Like, and I don't want to say I was involved in a lot of it, but I was kind of in that band, so it was kind of one of those things. But you know, I don't want to speak for Adam or on Adam because it's not my place, but there's this weird thing where he didn't like Dan and that, and I know you guys were kind of tight with Oddity, and then it turned into this like this whole weird thing, and you know how it is anyway when you're younger, and it's like fuck that band and fuck this band. And I didn't really feel one way or another about anybody, you know. I really wasn't that, but then there was also kind of that competition that could have been unhealthy too, like oh we're fucking sweet, like we had a great reception, and then like you guys were all death metal and like really badass, and then like Oddity was super fucking sweet too, I'm sure at that time, because if Dan's doing something, he's gonna do it really badass, you know. So there was just kind of that weird thing where it was like I don't really remember much because at the time I know we were partying and stuff too, but I remember kind of playing that show with you guys, but it was kind of like just this weird, you know, thing that happened, and you know it is what it is. But you stuck to that band for a long time in Rapture, a lot of different members and shit like that. Right?
Yeah, a lot of years doing it, and member changes out, and
Was Chad singing for you guys at that time?
He sang for us for quite a while. He started, I'm trying to remember now if he was doing guitar in the beginning or not, or just vocals. I think he was just doing vocals when we first started. But then maybe he played some guitar. It's hard to think back now and even remember the details, you know, but yeah.
Because I remember Dan. Even I never knew Dan Parra was in the band either.
Yeah,
That's like his call to, and because he always played in Product of Society, and then every time I'd see him, he'd be like, "Yeah, I used to play in Rapture, man." And I was like, "Yeah, that's weird. I didn't know that."
He played bass for us for quite a while.
Yeah, good dude right there. I like Dan. Yeah, so you guys were out just playing some shows or whatever, and then just kind of and then that's kind of how we linked up. Is like then Garvey. The funny shit is this like all the way the full circle thing. Then Garvey started singing for you guys, right?
Yep.
And then because I want to say that's when I kind of started like because I was dabbling in recording and shit. So then I started recording you guys. Yeah,
started. I guess we were seeing each other more and starting to know each other and get to know each other.
Yeah. Just weird how that like that whole circle just comes back around. And Garvey started singing for you guys, and I don't even know how Garvey came into the picture. You guys must have just been looking for a vocalist or something. Or
yeah, I don't even recall at this point. I do not remember.
Where'd you guys used to jam before you lived out in where you live now?
So when we first started in Rapture, we used to jam at Andy Eklund's house out in North Muskegon area, and we jammed at his house for
garage,
for a
basement,
long time.
or?
It was a bedroom, a spare bedroom.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we did that for quite a few of the first beginning years there, and then eventually it moved to my house later on. But yeah,
your house, because you were staying at Glen Oaks, right? And then did you have a house before you moved into the one you had now?
No. So I lived in the apartments for quite a few years, and that would have been, well, at the time, geez, I even remember Casey Ingersoll.
Yeah.
We jammed at his house for quite a while too.
Okay.
I forgot we had moved. We had moved it over there and been practicing there for quite a while too.
Because I remember, like, Adam and I were always pretty tight, and I remember him talking about going and jamming at Casey's house, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and then it would have moved to my house at the very last years when it was kind of starting to fizzle apart.
Yeah, that was kind of one of those things where it was. But so you guys were recording. You guys recorded something with Dan too.
Yeah,
like your very first thing or something.
Yeah, was it Prelude to Darkness, or I think that's what that was called. But yeah, he did the recording on that for us, and I remember that was back when I first just started using triggers, and I had no idea how to do the settings properly, and like they sounded like crap on that recording. They were just mistriggering and not solid, and like I just didn't know what I was doing with it at that point. So that was kind of a humbling experience going through that, A
little bit, before really stuff was getting edited too, like, because I'm not sure if he did that on a computer or not, but I just know when I recorded you guys, that's when the computers first started was kind of coming in, because I used to record everything on a fucking 4-track, that was like the way I always did it before. But then the computer started coming in and things started being a little easier to see and being able to like track individually, because I mean, at that time, there was stuff that was, just like anything, you're learning how to do it, right? So, like, you're learning how to record each individual part, because before, like, it's like, all right, let's hit record and fucking hopefully we make it to the end, And even when I was recording you guys, I'd have you do the song 3 times and pick the best one. Didn't know we could sit there and edit and splice all the best shit together, and that's kind of how you do it now, or, how we've done the later Infinite Design, where it's like, okay, do this part. Stop. All right, do this part, like do the drums part by part, like, so, and there's always kind of been that thing where it's, most bands do it that way now. Shit, dude, I've seen some bands like punch in 3 notes at a time, like it's a long process, but it's like, or they'll just play like one riff and then stop, and one riff and then stop, or like, okay, I missed those 2 notes, and they'll just punch in the 2 notes, I mean, that's how the ability that you have now to be able to, accomplish that shit, So
yeah, it was a whole different age back then, because, with the triggers, again, going back to that, I had no one to talk to or ask about or get advice. Like, how do I do? It was just experimenting. It was just kept trying all these settings and trying to make it work right. And it was a challenge, man. It took me a while to finally get it dialed in to where it worked properly. And
yeah, no YouTube videos.
No, I mean, the only sources you had was if you went to a show and you could happen to catch a drummer and try to grab his ear about what he was doing. But again, not too many people were doing it locally. It was hard to find anyone to even ask about or get knowledge about it back then.
Did you talk to Chuck at all about it? Because I think he was probably using triggers.
Yeah, it seems like I probably did try to ask him some advice on it back then. I'm sure he probably did tell me some stuff, more than likely.
Yeah. So then, that's kind of how we started linking up. Then I started kind of recording you guys. I think Garvey suggested that you come to me because I was doing a little bit of recording and stuff. I wasn't good at it or anything, but it was audible. So, and then I remember recording like the EP with you guys, and we went through that. And then I remember then we kind of went and you guys had almost like a full length type of thing that you did after that. Mm-hmm. And then that's when Enrapture kind of started fizzling out. So do you even remember what happened, or?
I think it's just, just life, and everyone starts after years of doing it, and, people just kind of get burned out and start to lose the ambition to keep doing it, and, stuff in life, other things going on kind of happen. So after a while of the fluctuating members and the years of doing it, it eventually just kind of fades away, and I think that's really what it was.
Well, I mean, lucky for me, then that kind of started a whole nother fucking era of playing music, and it was cool jamming with you. I remember even the first jam, we started writing some stuff, and it was just me, you, and Garvey. The original recipe plus Garvey, and then I just remember writing some stuff with you, and we were like, I know when I left, I was like, oh man, I was so fucking excited with the stuff that we started writing. I was like,
dude, I just remember
badass.
Skeleton Key, just the magic of that, dude. Yeah. That was like just a brilliant song, and like when we were first starting to jam that, I was just like, wow, this is just something different, totally different than what I was doing before. Musically, it was just a whole new level of what we were starting to do there, and that brought on, I think, the whole pushing ourselves to try to be so extreme at that point with Infinite. So much tech, so much stuff that we got too carried away with that. But that's the way it goes,
I always felt, especially in the early Infinite design, I was always just playing like a little bit beyond what I actually really could do.
Right. That's exactly it, man. That's always where I was with the drums too. It's like, yeah, I can play that, but can I really play that comfortably clean every time? 9 out of 10 times, can I play that clean? No, not usually. If I'm having a good night, I play it well. A lot of times I don't. So it's like, that's the thing. You're trying to push yourself. You're so hungry to do it that you're pushing yourself way beyond where you're comfortable at. But I guess that's how you grow too, right? I mean, you got to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that does make you better. I felt like I've always got better in the band. I felt we kind of hit our stride with Fragments, because we kind of dialed some of that technicality back, and we started focusing a little bit more on songwriting. So we kept the technicality and melodic stuff.
Right.
I thought it was always cool because we always aimed to be able to do whatever we kind of wanted at one point. Like at first it was like, well, let's just play as fast, as heavy, as crazy riff soup shit, because I went back and like watched a couple of them QD shows, like some of the first ones, one from 2007 and then one from 08. Because I remember our first show was a fucking disaster. I remember that, like, just because it was hard to hear and shit. And like, I think there was just this expectation that we were going to be badass. And we knew we were badass, but it just didn't work out. I think we were kind of disappointed. And then we kind of ditched the triggers too, I remember, because there was that one point where it was just like we were triggering everything and shit kind of sounded weird sometimes. Because that's always been a bitch to dial them fucking things in. Even just the kicks themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was trying to do the toms and the snare and everything triggered, and like very few bands ever pulled that off good. I mean, the Nick Barker from Dimmu Borgir, he always seemed to pull off triggering the toms and have it come out cool, but I don't know how much studio magic was done to make that sound good, but trying to trigger the toms and the snare was just always a disaster and just never did work out. But again, it's just something you try and you learn from it and try to grow and move on. But yeah, going back to us when we first started jamming too, I mean, for me, that was my first experience with having someone else give me ideas into different types of drumming or things to try. That was my first venture into that, like the breakdowns and that kind of stuff. I had never played that kind of beat before, and I remember struggling with that. But it's like, once I learned it, it's like, this is another cool element that I can bring as a drummer now to the band, and that's what was cool about Infinite was pushing ourselves to try different things, like that, where previously it was more rigid. I just did the drums however I wanted, and there wasn't too much input from the other guys of what to do here and there. So that was a different experience for sure with Infinite.
I think going into Infinite as well, it was just, we started probably mature as people too. Like, I mean, if you talk to us, probably not, but but I mean, in music ways, you know, like we would. I was to the point where it was like before it was always kind of like you kind of have that ego in music, right? But like when I started jamming with you, you're such like a cool, humble dude. You never have anything bad to say about anybody. And it was just like I always felt comfortable around you where we could just like, let's just try that, man. You know, like I think that's what made us work and what worked for so long. Like we didn't come into it with any idea of what had to happen. We know we wanted to be heavy as fuck and we wanted to be technical and stuff, but I just felt like we always like were willing to try shit, and if it didn't work, it didn't work, you know. And I think we kept growing on that, and that's really kind of what made the band work for so long, I think, you know. And then, of course, we suffered the same thing as fucking everybody else suffers, you know.
Yep. I mean, again, it's just the amount of years doing it at the time, the energy, the expectation of what this should be at this point in your life after doing something, and all the energy put forth and time and money and collaboration of so many different people. And again, members changing constantly, trying to find new people. It's just the same challenges that everyone faces. And it just, again, wore us down at the end too.
Yeah, I mean, when we basically became a 3-piece, and then we played the one show as a 3-piece, and if you are listening to this podcast, we will have a whole Infinite Design documentary out. Go grab the new album, plug. But you know, we got the album out. That was a long process, and just, you know, dealing with people is always just dealing with people. You know, that's always been the challenge of being in any band. You got to deal with fucking 4 other people and their personality. You'd be the easiest going motherfucker, and like maybe the dude with the best skills isn't always the easiest guy to get along with. Right. So, you know, we kind of wore down, and then we played that show as a 3-piece, and I didn't really want to do that anymore. I was like, I'd be willing to do that any day, but I always felt like Infinite Design had to be a fucking two guitars, man. It just to be able to get the full-fledged, and you're kind of, you know, really limiting yourself with all the other songs that we wrote and shit too. You know, it was just one of those things where it's just 3-piece was not going to work, you know. So, and then so I want to talk a little bit about Iron Sharpens, and then I kind of want to bring it back around, talk a little bit more about some other metal things. But so then Iron Sharpens Iron happens, you know. So that a little bit about that. I mean, I can speak on that. Obviously, Larry went his own way in Infinite Design. You know, no bad blood from me or you. You know, Larry's always our good friend. You know,
always, man.
Yeah, great dude. And then so you guys kind of jammed here and there, kind of off to the side before, because he kind of wanted to do a side project, right? So So it was kind of some shit, and then like it was just taking forever to do anything or get back on the stage or whatever. And then that's kind of, you guys were jamming. You guys had like one song, and I was like, fuck it, I'll come jam with you guys and just see what's up, you know, maybe help you write some songs or whatever, you know, because I always kind of felt I was getting stronger in that aspect as far as like putting things together and directing things in a certain way, you know. And so now you've been doing that for what, 2-3 years now?
That's probably already getting on to be 3 or more now. It's crazy, man. Yeah. And so been doing that now, and you know, to me now this is more kind of going back to basics in a way. Like it's just about writing metal music that is fun and we can have a good time and play, and not have the pressure there of expectations of, you know, having to make some goal or get something to happen from it, you know. And it's just still trying to do music but keep it fun. And that's what I think has been great about this, is there's not that pressure of having to try to get some goal that's probably not going to happen.
Right. So. Yeah. Some outcome. Because outcomes always fuck shit up, man. You know, because then the outcomes lead to disappointment when it doesn't happen, and then you kind of put yourself in a bad position, you know. And then for me, it was one of those things where, like, I played with you guys for, I don't know, a year and a half or whatever. We put the record out, and then it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I didn't really want to do winter shows. I didn't really want to carry shit in the winter. Like, I mean, it's different if it's a Muskegon, but there's no fucking metal Muskegon shows no more, really, for anything. And then so I kind of left the band for my own thing, and that wasn't nothing. But then I see you guys are playing at Mulligan's, and Larry had mentioned something about, because now you have Jeff from Drink Your Blood, which I'm hoping to have those guys on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, so that'd be awesome.
Fuck yeah. That's one of my goals, is to have those guys over and chat with them about their journey. But Then, so now you're playing with like their guitar player too?
Yeah,
then?
Brad.
Yeah.
So he's been jamming with us too. Played our last show, was the first show with him. And so that was awesome to have Larry back to just being a front man again. It was really cool because like I forgot kind of what that energy is of him just being a front man and be able to do that. And that does add a whole new element to it. So that was cool, man. So yeah, we're going forward now with Brad and Jeff helping us out. Obviously, for the most part, it's just Larry and I jamming because those guys are in Kalamazoo, so it's challenging for us to get together.
Yeah.
Basically just before a show, we'll get together and do a jam. But other than that, it's Larry and I just kind of writing stuff. And right now we're trying to figure out how do we do this because Brad has a bunch of riffs and ideas, but now it's like, how do we translate into bringing this to the room with Larry and I and trying to use their riffs and write something. So it's kind of, we're trying to figure out that process right now. That's where we're at with that.
Well, Larry had always mentioned that the door was open if I ever wanted to come play a show. So this podcast will be out on, I believe it's September 19th. So I am going to play that show with you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. He told me that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's cool. That'll be awesome to have you back up there with us.
I kind of figured, like, why the fuck not? Like, that's my fastest way to get back on stage anyway. Because I was kind of doing some other musical stuff with some other guys, but it's just like, man, it's just a slow fucking process. And it's like I told you even before we started this, I fucking love metal, dude. I just want to play metal. I just want to go fucking headbang and play some heavy metal. Like, that's always kind of been my thing, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes because it was kind of me that stepped out of the band. But at this point, this podcast is my priority. And then after that, whatever else happens, like I'm just writing music and hanging out. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm not doing all the producing and trying to do videos and all those 98 other things that always kind of just clouded up my day, So when I'm not thinking about things and that outcome, and then Larry always said that, hey, if you want to play a show. And I kind of wish that I would have known that because I would have fucking stepped up and played that show with you guys at the when you guys had to do the 2-piece thing, because I didn't want to see you guys have to do that, So I was like, I should have stepped up then and did it. But like, for me, as far as my involvement, it is what it is. It's you guys' thing. But if I can come and at least make it sound thicker and, fucking throw down and, I'll throw some vocals out there and some of those songs I wrote anyway. So y'all karaokeing my shit anyway.
Like, where's that royalty check?
Yeah. I get free drinks too. Shit. Don't even drink, but yeah. So, but yeah, to come back around, that'd be cool to get back on the stage with you guys again. I'll be done. Definitely come to do some practices with you guys and making sure the shit's tight and making whatever. And for me, I always think it's cool to be able to jam with other people too. So like I never jam with that Brad dude or whatever. So if there's any way that I can continue to contribute or help or whatever, like I'll definitely be there for that. Because I would like to be in a fucking like heavy metal, death metal band, but it's like there's no drummers. There's nobody that, maybe I could ask Stroud or something if he wanted to try something, but he's got like 3 bands he's already in, and it's just kind of like that, So it's like I'll just write shit with my drum machine, my superior drummer on the computer, and I'll have my own music, the way I want to do it or whatever. And if I can come play some guitar and play a couple of shows that you guys got lined up or whatever, fucking why not, Because I ain't doing shit else, And at the end of the day, music will always, metal and music will always be my thing. So, but let's kind of go back to the metal thing. Like, let's talk about some shows. Because I know we've been to some shows. We played a lot of shows, right? Like, but, as far as what are some of your, like, favorite memorable shows that you went to? Obviously, Milwaukee Metal Fest. That's a big fucking thing, bro.
That's the gem at the top of the list for sure there. That Milwaukee Metal Fest in 97. Unbelievable amount of bands I saw there. Just huge bands. I mean, back in the day, just about every band you can think of was there, man. I mean, Cradle of Filth, Dying Fetus, Mortician.
Did they have a drum machine?
They had an actual drummer there. Yeah,
okay.
They had an actual drummer. Merciful Fate was there. Impelled Nazareth. Like, so many bands, dude. Like that was the show back then. Like, and that was the first time I ever heard Dying Fetus.
Oh, okay.
I saw them live, and I was like, holy fuck, these guys are fucking badass. So it was immediate go over to the merch booth and buy their CD, of course, after that.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that was for sure one of the top gems in my memory of best shows was Milwaukee Metal Fest back then. If you wanted to see as many of the bands as you were into, that was the place to be, because it was, just I don't remember, it was a 2 or 3 day festival and multiple stages with bands going on. And
yeah, the relapse stage, all the, the big fucking, the main stage, the relapse stage. Because obviously with the Metal Maniacs magazine, I always kept tabs on that because they always reviewed that and showed the bands and everything. It was always one of those shows where it's like, fuck, I want to go to that. And I remember Luke went to it one year too. And my goal is to they did resurrect it this year. Do you know that? Mm-mm. So it went away for a long time, and I'm hopefully one of the stories I'm going to tell on this podcast, one of our bio episodes, I'm going to go through the whole Milwaukee Metal Fest thing and kind of tell the whole story.
Oh, that's
of
cool,
it. So
man.
So get some more information on that, for my own sake and hopefully for the listeners. But Jimmy Josta from Hatebreed, he put it back on last year.
Oh, okay.
So they had a bunch of fucking, it was the same kind of thing. There was a bunch of cool bands. I know Anthrax was on the stage. Shadows Fall came back. That band I sent you, Frozen Soul, that's just, I don't know if you checked those guys out, but they're kind of like, there's like this new wave of old school death metal coming back. Like these guys that are just throwing down them fucking old death metal grooves, like not crazy technical shit, not trying to be as technical, but just that headbanging, fucking ripping, slamming shit. Like you got that Sansuzo Bog band, or I don't even know, Sanguska Bog, that band with the long ass fucking title. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's quite a few bands like that are coming back and kind of doing that. But like that Frozen Soul band was there, and they've been spoken on in really high regard. I definitely would say check those guys out. But yeah, so Jimmy Drosta brought that Metal Fest back, and now I'm like, well, this might be my time to like make it happen if it actually happens next year. Like maybe I should really plan it out, think about it, and go over there and stay a couple of days and actually go to one, just to say I went to one, because it's always something I wanted to go to,
Yeah, man, as far as shows, I've seen, a lot of the bands that I've loved, and they're always great shows, getting to see Morbid Angel and Deicide and Cannibal Corpse, all those core bands back in the day, were great shows. But I think the ones that stand out more when you see ones that you like really look up to, as far as like, Origin, and the first time I got to see them, and, I've seen them multiple times, but seeing, John on the drums and what he does, because I'm such a huge influence his playing and what I wanted to be, and so seeing a band like that, of course, is just amazing to be able to see live, and that's definitely a hell of an experience.
Behemoth was a cool one we went to.
Yeah.
That was a sweet fucking show.
That was definitely a sweet show.
Is there any on your list that you haven't got to see? Is there like a couple on your list that you want to see?
I mean, there's a few of those core death metal bands back in the day I never did get to see. I was always a big Malevolent Creation fan. Never got to see those guys. Okay. They were always that perfect melding of thrash and death metal. They do both thrash, well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, never got to see those guys. That's one of those bands I've always wished I could have got to see. Other than that, there's a lot of them I did get to see. Trying to think of who else maybe is on a bucket list.
Well, I do know that we're going to make time to go see Despised
Icon. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's another one of my favorite bands. Just love those guys, and I'll finally get to see them. That's going to be amazing. Definitely looking forward to that.
I fucking want to see that so bad. Like, I already told the wife, I'm like, I'm going to the show. Me and Adam are going to the show. I don't care. Like Fetus, I've seen those guys like 5 times now, and like you're the one that got me into those guys. I was kind of unaware of them. Then when I heard those guys, I was blown the fuck away. I was like, oh, holy shit, this is like technical slam. I was like, what the fuck? These guys are sweet. But did you ever get into Devourment? I think I asked you that.
I've heard some of it, and it's pretty cool, man. It's definitely that, brutal slam death kind of shit.
It's real raw too. It's just real. It took me a little bit. At first, I kind of didn't like it because I was really production head, but then because even their newer stuff isn't that great of production. But then I heard this interview, then I started getting into them, because like sometimes when you hear the guys talk or whatever, it's like you kind of like, you know what I mean? You start liking their personality. So it's like, I'm going to give this another chance, and then you kind of realize those were some of the guys that were really putting it out there for that gore fucking brutal death metal shit, They definitely have that fucking Maytag vocal too, that fucking...
It's that whirlpool vocal.
Yeah. But, yeah. Unfortunately, I've never been able to see At the Gates, and that's one band that I wanted to see. Like, I got to see Dark Funeral. That was one that was on the list. I got to see them. I've seen Carcass Death. Luckily, I got to see Death like right before Chuck passed, and that was probably the show.
Funny,
for me.
I've got to see him, too, and I was never a huge Death fan, but I did get to see him with Chuck, and it was definitely a cool show. I remember it was just Detroit somewhere. Don't remember the name of the gig where they even played, but it was so many years ago.
Oh, you just went to see them individually, or were they on a bill or something with somebody else?
Yeah, there was some other, like one of them bands like Blind Guardian. That's kind of that.
Oh, that butt rocky type shit.
Yeah. I remember they were playing with them, and I don't remember who else.
Was it on the Perseverance tour? Was it 99 or 98 or something?
Man, it would have been that. It would have been around there. It was probably that.
So we were probably at the same show because that was a show.
It very well could. Yeah. That would be crazy to think about too. Oh,
it was Hammerfall.
Maybe that's who it was.
And they were doing that. Oh,
yeah.
I was like, man, these guys
that's fucked up to think about. That's fucked up to think about now that we could have been at the same show then and didn't even know each other.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
so weird, man.
Yeah, because that was the show I seen him at.
I bet you it is the same show.
And then this is one thing that like listeners of this podcast, the people that do listen to this, they'll fucking probably hear about 100 times, but if not more. But so when they came out after Chuck passed, they re-released all the CDs. And there were, I think some of them were remasters or some were remasters, but I know they were repackaged with like old demo tracks and shit. Mm-hmm. But if you open up the Perseverance one, the Sound of Perseverance, if you open that up, there's a picture of that show because me and Nick are right there in the front row of the picture. It shows us we're doing this. It's in the CD and shit. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I was like, that's kind of my fucking shining moment because like being one of my favorite fucking bands and like being able to see them. But yeah, so you must have went to individually see them. See, I didn't think you liked them that much that you would even took the time to do that.
I think it was because it was the buddy Aaron Burroughs, my buddy I was hanging out with that time. He was into him big time, so I think that's why I went.
Oh, okay.
And I'd see shows like that because of that, because you're friends with someone that likes them. So I saw. King Diamond. I was never a King Diamond fan.
Yeah, me neither.
But I went to the show and like it was a hell of a show, man.
Yeah.
Like the guy puts on a theatrical, entertaining show and it was cool to watch. But I was never a King Diamond fan. But you know how it is. You get to see some bands that you're not into because of other people that you're friends with. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I went to that Upheaval Fest in Grand Rapids a couple weeks ago, and like none of the bands. I mean, Lamb of God played, but none of those bands were bands that I would have like had to rush there to see, you know, because it was kind of like not even really metal. Like it's hard for me to say because, like I said, I want to try to keep stuff positive. Some stuff just isn't for me. You know, back in the day, I'd be like, oh, they fucking suck. You know, even like Hammerfall. I remember them being really fucking good. At that time, I thought they sucked because it wasn't death. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see something brutal too. You know what I mean? I was like, they could have had like a cooler band play than fucking this band. But at this point in my life, it's like it's just not for me. It's not that it's bad. It's not that it sucks. You know, back in the day, of course, you're gonna be like that fucking sucks. You know, because you're just young and that's what it is. But you know, just wasn't for me. But that's kind of how that Upheaval Fest was. Like all the bands sounded great. There was one band that really impressed me that I'd probably listen to, Dayseeker. But every band was kind of like that. Really like. I want to say it's like breakdowns for 14-year-old girls type music. You know what I mean? It was kind of really kind of girly. Like one of the bands sounded kind of like Papa Roach, but with breakdowns, and it was just kind of like not bad. They all sounded great. They're all great. It just wasn't for me. You know, Lamb of God was kick ass, but I got free tickets and I got to go with a dude that it's my wife's husband or me, my wife's friend's husband, and. You know, I've never really hung out with him like that. And he's just kind of like, hey, man, you want to go to the show? It's like basically I got tickets for it. And I was like, all right, let's just go, you know. So it was a great experience. It was fun. It was a hell of a day, you know. But it's just one of those same type of things where you just kind of go because you want to go with a buddy or whatever. Mm-hmm. They enjoy themselves. They like the music. So, like, then you get the fortune of seeing bands. And it's always cool to watch live shows, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. That's cool, man.
But, yeah, so this podcast will come out on September 19th, and then I'll be playing that show with you guys on September 22nd, so that's cool. I always appreciate that you guys welcome me back with open arms. You know, that's one of those things where it's like it's cool for me because then I can get back on stage and, you know, have fun playing music with you guys. It's always one thing that I fucking love to do. You know, it'd be cool playing with that Brad dude too, you know, just kind of, you know.
I mean, it's going to be cool to have like a full band, man. 2 guitars, bass, drum, Larry just being a front man. I mean, that's going to be pretty killer, man.
And then obviously I'll contribute whatever vocals too, you know, because we always kind of did the did some backing vocals and shit. So yeah, it'll be fun, man. You know, so that will come out then. I do want to thank you for your time. Is there anything else you want to say? Or I know you're not big on social media, so you don't really give a shit if anybody follows you or whatever, you know, or any of that type of shit.
Right. But just thank you, Jay, for having me, man. It was a cool experience, and I had a good time talking about everything and reminiscing, you know, a lot of years and a lot of stuff we've done together and been friends and music, you know, and it's just, thank you.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. And, you know, with that being said, all I want to say, you know, being the end of the podcast, and really what I want to say is we did put out a record, the final Infinite Design record. It came out on June 30th. You can stream that everywhere. We also have hard copies for sale. So if anybody's interested in that, you know, want to check that out, we would appreciate it because we put a lot of fucking time and effort and energy in that. There will be an Infinite Design documentary kind of wrapping up the whole thing, you know, having that come back around. So there'll be a lot more information about the band. And right now you can go to the Infinite Design YouTube channel. You can see like all the old shows that we played, so you kind of see what we're always doing, you know, what we did back then. So, and then that is our 4th full-length record?
Yeah, 4th. Yeah.
So, you know, we have a lot of stuff out there. We've done a lot. We played a lot of shows. We've done a lot of things together. And it's just cool that, you know, we even say that in the documentary that at the end of the day, it's really about the relationship that we built, because you become one of my, you know, best friends, and it's cool to be able to at least sit down with you and talk to you about shit. Man.
And like, you know, no matter how many years go by or what, if, you know, we're off doing our own things, it's always going to be come back and jam together. Let's jam together. Right. It's always going to be there. You know, it's not like it's ever going to be weird or we're going to feel disconnected. That'll never happen, man. So
yeah, it's not like back in the day where it's like, fuck that guy, he quit the band, or
exactly.
he don't want to do it or whatever. It's like everybody goes through shit and everybody does shit, you know, so it is what it is. But yeah, man, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. You know, thank you for your time, and fucking thank you for being on the Metal Maniacs show. You know, you're our first interview, and I couldn't think of somebody better that I want, somebody that's close and near to my heart. So yeah, thank you for your time, and check out Iron Sharpens Iron. It's XIron Sharpens IronX. That's how you can support Adam. You can support Adam and myself and any Infinite Design things by looking that up, watching those videos, subscribing to our YouTube or whatever. Yeah, that's behind us, but still we want people to listen. We still put that music and that time and that effort and energy out there. And we still, you know, we still would like people to enjoy that and just, you know, whatever. And I had a handful of people that haven't done a lot of promo as far as like trying to push it or whatever, but the people that I have had, I've had a lot of good compliments and feedback on it. So like, it's, you know, at least we did it for ourselves, and at the end of the day, like whatever outcome is what it is, you know. And who knows, fucking this podcast, people start listening to it, they see the banner, fucking they might start, you know, listening to the band more, and shit, it's still out there for people to listen to. It's not like just because we're not doing that anymore doesn't mean we don't want people to still enjoy it, like especially all the time we put into it. So all right, brother, I love you, man.
Thank you, man.
Peace.